Only after Simon gave me to his twin brother did I learn that, in the 3 years of our marriage, this Buddhist heir from a wealthy family had never fallen in love with me. The one he loved was my sister. I don't love you. My family keeps pressuring me to have a child. You can have one with Dylan instead. Yet when I appeared before him holding my pregnancy test report, his eyes turned red. Did you really fall in love with my brother? I said nothing. Then there was a knock at the door behind me. A man's carefree voice came from outside. Open the door. Sister-in-law. Chapter 1. For 3 years of marriage, Simon had been abstinent and aloof, never touching me. He said that because he practiced Buddhist teachings, he could not break his vows. So I willingly moved into a separate bedroom and kept my distance from him, until his reckless twin brother, Dylan, returned from abroad. By accident, I overheard a conversation between them. Dylan, take my place and consummate the marriage with Laura. Simon's tone was indifferent, as though he were casually mentioning a complete stranger. The next second, a lazy voice laced with swagger sounded out. Have you lost your mind from chanting scriptures every day? She's not my wife. Wait, don't tell me. He paused briefly, and his voice carried a hint of gloating amusement. You can't do it? Simon didn't get angry. Calmly seated on a meditation cushion, he rotated a white jade prayer bead bracelet between his fingers. It's simply that I feel nothing for someone I don't love. One simple sentence nailed me to the spot. Snap. The calligraphy brush Dylan had been idly playing with suddenly broke in half. As if nothing had happened, he bent down to pick it up, the corner of his lips curling slightly. Oh, really? If you don't love her, then who do you love? Simon fell silent for a moment. At that instant, my heart tightened. Then I heard him speak again and say a name that was painfully familiar to me. Miranda, my cousin, once known as the nation's first love, who had announced her retirement from show business and emigrated overseas 3 years ago. Hearing that name brought back memories from long ago. Chapter 2. Simon and I had known each other since childhood. When he was in 9th grade, he became seriously ill and was sent to a temple for cultivation. After that, we lost contact. The next time we met was during our final year of high school. He had someone deliver a letter to me. Opening the plain envelope, I saw the elegant and refined handwriting of the young man. Life in the temple is boring. Just a few words. But to a girl secretly in love with Simon, they felt like sparks igniting a prairie fire. I thought he was hinting for me to visit him. So as soon as vacation started, I packed my homework and headed to the temple. When we met, Simon was dressed in simple white robes, his temperament as cold and distant as ever. His gaze moved past me. You came alone? Failing to notice the disappointment in his eyes, I honestly took out the letter from my pocket. Didn't you write it only to me? Simon froze for a second. His brows drew together slightly, but soon relaxed. Then he turned around and led me through the temple grounds. 10 minutes later, however, he brought me right back to the entrance. That's it. You've seen everything. Time to go home. Still confused, I blinked. That's all? Simon, can't you? That's enough. He interrupted me and rubbed his tired eyes. My time for worship has arrived. I can't accompany you. Oh, disappointed. I lowered my head and turned to leave. But Simon spoke again. Next time, don't come alone. It's inappropriate for a man and a woman to spend time together by themselves. The moment I heard the words next time, all my disappointment vanished. I even found an excuse for his coldness that day. He was shy. So when we met again, I dragged Dylan along right after his violin practice. On the mountain path, the boy dressed in black, whose face was identical to Simon's, looked especially annoyed. If you like him, then come by yourself. It's not like I like him. Since I was asking him for a favor, I quickly tried to appease him. Oh, come on. Then tell me what kind of girl you like, and I'll find one for you as soon as we get back down the mountain. Dylan stopped walking. He lowered his eyes and looked at me. Then, with his long legs, he took 3 steps at once and widened the distance between us. The wind carried his words to my ears. I'm not telling you. I clicked my tongue and hurried after the boy carrying a violin case on his back. Fine, don't tell me. When we reached the temple entrance, Simon was already waiting there. The moment he saw Dylan beside me, his expression darkened. Why did you bring him? Before I could answer, Dylan let out a cold scoff. What's wrong with bringing me? With that, he shoved past Simon with one hand in his pocket and strolled into the temple on his own. That trip to the temple was still unpleasant. While Dylan was away using the restroom, Simon said coldly beside me, "Bring a girl next time." I couldn't understand his logic. Why? Are you discriminating based on gender? He was silent for a while before suddenly lowering his head to look at me. Because I'm jealous. Is that reason good enough? His unexpected bluntness hit me like a thunderbolt. For a long time, I couldn't recover from the shock. I thought my youthful crush had finally been returned. Unable to contain my excitement, I shared the story with my cousin Miranda, whom I was close to, and asked her to accompany me the next time. She agreed. That time, when Simon saw the two of us, his eyes immediately lit up. Back then, I thought he was happy because I hadn't brought a boy along. Now that I think about it, that iceberg of a man had only melted because he saw Miranda. And this truth, I only learned it after 3 years of marriage. Standing outside the study, my eyes gradually reddened. It felt as though countless needles were piercing my heart, filling it with dense waves of pain. Simon, you never liked me at all, did you? Then why did you marry me? Chapter 3. I sat on the couch in a daze for a long time. In the end, my tears still fell to the floor. At some point, Simon had come into the living room, standing tall in the shadows. His silent eyes looked especially cold. After staring at me for a long while, he finally spoke with obvious impatience. Have you cried enough? If you're done, I need to talk to you about something important. I said nothing. I simply wiped away my tears and walked over to him, standing on my tiptoes. I tried to kiss him, but the next second, he shoved me away violently. My waist slammed into the corner of a table. It hurt, but it wasn't even a tenth as painful as the disgust in Simon's eyes. Didn't I tell you on our wedding day that I practice Buddhist teachings and can't break my vows? What kind of nonsense are you pulling now? Then what if it were my cousin standing in front of you? Simon froze, as if some thought had crossed his mind. His ears actually turned red as he tightened his grip on the white jade prayer beads in his hand. He was moved, but when facing me, he was still pretending. Laura, stop being unreasonable. What happens between us has nothing to do with her. I exposed his lie immediately. How does it have nothing to do with her? Isn't she the one you love? He froze again. A trace of panic flashed through his eyes. You heard that? Before I could answer, he seemed relieved instead. Good, then I'll be honest with you. I don't love you. As for the child my family keeps pressuring us to have, you can have one with Dylan. Anyway, he looks exactly like me. It shouldn't be hard for you to accept. Every word was like a blade, cutting away the feelings I had held for him. And his calm, indifferent tone made it clear just how ridiculous my 15 years of loving him had been. I raised my hand to wipe away the fresh tears spilling from my eyes. But then I met the gaze of Dylan, who was somehow leaning over the railing of the upstairs hallway. Ever since Simon and I got married, Dylan had gone abroad to study music. This was the first time we had seen each other in 3 years. He was still the same as before. His sharp features were full of confidence and unruly charm. As for me, I was nothing but a mess. Simon followed my gaze and saw his brother as well. Expressionless, he said, I've already told Laura, you can stay here tonight. Then he turned and left, without sparing me a single glance, not caring that Dylan was still there. I completely lost control. Like a madwoman, I smashed every antique in the living room to pieces. When I was finally exhausted, I collapsed onto the floor and buried my face in my hands. Sobbing, Dylan walked downstairs and crouched beside me. Still want to smash things? I'll buy new ones for you. Sniffling, I shook my head, forcing a smile through the pain. I said, sorry, we finally meet again after so long, and you have to see all this. Where are you staying tonight? I'll have a driver take you there. He stared directly into my eyes. There was something unreadable in his gaze. Didn't my brother tell me to stay here? I froze, staring at him blankly. It took a long time before I found my voice. You're serious? This was absurd. How could Dylan agree to something like this? Why not? He raised an eyebrow, his tone unexpectedly serious. I was so startled that I backed away repeatedly. Of course not. I'm your sister-in-law. Suddenly, Dylan dropped to one knee on the floor and advanced toward me with an overwhelming sense of pressure. So what? Terrified, I scrambled to my feet and ran, but he caught up and lifted me around the waist. Dylan, have you lost your mind? TSK. Such a huge reaction? You looked too heartbroken. So I was just messing with you. I froze. After being startled by him like that, I had actually forgotten to cry. Meanwhile, he had already returned to his usual carefree demeanor and gently set me down on the couch. Get some rest. I'll clean this up. As he spoke, he poured me a glass of water. At that moment, I noticed a tablet lying beside the couch. It belonged to Simon, as if possessed by some invisible force. I picked it up. Then I entered Miranda's birthday. The tablet unlocked successfully. Chapter 4. I opened WeChat. As expected, Miranda was the only person pinned to the top of his chat list. The two of them were still talking. Miranda, will this really work? What if Laura doesn't get pregnant? Simon, she has to get pregnant. Miranda, I'm sorry. I really didn't know my condition wouldn't allow me to have an abortion. Simon, it's not your fault. Blame me. I shouldn't have proposed to Laura out of spite after our argument. Now my parents like her so much that even getting a divorce is difficult. Miranda, sob emoji, then it's your fault. And that night too. I told you to buy protection. You insisted it would be fine. Look at the situation now. Simon, don't be angry. Sweetheart, it's my fault. Once Laura gives birth, I'll immediately replace the baby with ours. Miranda, then when are you going to marry me? Simon, baby, wait a little longer, okay? My parents won't agree to me divorcing her within the next few years. Miranda, fine then. So annoying. Hurry over. I'm waiting to take a bath with you. Looking at their chat history, my face turned pale. No wonder Simon suddenly proposed to me 3 years ago. No wonder he suddenly wanted a child. It was all for Miranda. They had already been together for a long time. At that moment, my phone vibrated. It was Miranda. My dear Laura, I'm back in the country today. When are we getting together? I didn't reply. Instead, I looked at Dylan, who was sweeping the floor nearby. The words Simon had spoken not long ago surfaced in my mind. Anyway, he looks exactly like me. It shouldn't be hard for you to accept. The same? How were they the same? They were completely different. Simon would never clean up the mess on the floor for me. Noticing my gaze, Dylan walked over and raised an eyebrow in confusion. Why are you staring at me? Are you not feeling well? That was different too. Simon would never take the initiative to show concern for me. The tears I had only just managed to stop spilled out again uncontrollably. Dylan instantly panicked. Clumsily, he reached out and helped wipe away my tears. Hey, little troublemaker. Why are you crying again? Stop crying. Once I finish cleaning up, I'll go beat my brother up for you, all right? And honestly, if we're being morally questionable for a second, if things really don't work out, find another man. Haven't you seen plenty of couples in our circle who only pretend to be happy together? You don't need to waste your life hanging on to that idiot. The moment he showed me a little kindness, all the grievances I had been suppressing came pouring out. I know all that, but it still hurts so much. I've loved him for 15 years. Why would he treat me like this? Gently, Dylan lifted his hand and brushed away the tears at the corners of my eyes with his thumb. I understand. How about I take you for a drive later to clear your head? He had always comforted me like this. He knew I liked the feeling of the breeze against my face. So whenever I was sad, he would take me out riding on his scooter. I would sit behind him and complain about everything. Most of it was about Simon. I sniffled and shook my head. Maybe next time. I hit the corner of the table earlier. My waist hurts. He froze. Instinctively, he reached out as if to lift my shirt and check the injury. But the moment his fingers touched the fabric, he stopped himself. Can I take a look? If it's serious, I'll take you to the hospital. He raised his eyes to meet mine. Caught off guard, I fell into the concern and heartache reflected in them. Without thinking, I nodded. The hem of my t-shirt was lifted slightly. A dark bruise came clearly into Dylan's view. Chapter 5. The hand Dylan had braced against the edge of the couch suddenly clenched into a fist as he stared at the bruise for a long time. For some reason, my face grew hot. Just as I was about to pull my shirt back down, Dylan released it first and stood up to retrieve a bottle of medicated oil from the first aid kit. Lie down. Watching Dylan rub his palms together to warm them, I hesitated for a moment. In the end, I obediently lay face down on the couch. The floor-to-ceiling window across from us reflected Dylan's movements. Tall and long-legged, he knelt on one knee beside the couch and gently lifted my shirt. The next second, warmth spread across the left side of my lower back. The heat made my skin tighten instantly, and I reflexively turned to avoid it. Dylan looked up. His dark eyes met mine through the reflection in the glass. "Does it hurt?" His voice was low and husky. For some reason, the sound made my ears feel warm. I quickly lowered my head and buried my face between my arms. Following his question, I muttered softly, "Yeah, why you need to be gentler." Dylan froze for a moment. Then he suddenly let out a quiet laugh. I was just about to ask what he was laughing at when I felt his hand touch my lower back again. This time, I forced myself not to move away. Instead, I secretly tightened my grip on the pillow beneath my head, so hard that my fingertips turned pale. With my face buried in the pillow, deprived of sight, my other senses seemed to become overly sensitive. I could feel the skin he touched tense instantly before gradually relaxing beneath the pressure of his massage. I could hear his breathing. It seemed heavier than usual. I could smell the faint scent of soap lingering on him, subtle, yet impossible to ignore. And every time he pressed down, the knee resting beside me would lightly brush against the side of my thigh. The air seemed to be growing thinner. I found it difficult to breathe. Then my phone suddenly rang, like a drowning person finally being pulled to the surface. I hurriedly answered it. It was Simon. "Don't stay up too late fooling around with Dylan. We're going back to the family estate for dinner tomorrow." I tried my best to steady my emotions. "Okay. I know." My voice suddenly rose at the end. Dylan had no idea what had gotten into him. The hand on my lower back suddenly pressed harder. "That hurts." I turned and glared at him. "Can you be gentler?" Dylan put on an extremely innocent expression. Blinking twice, he said, "I didn't mean to. You, Laura." Simon spoke again. There was a trace of irritation hidden in his voice. "What are you and my brother doing?" I immediately realized he had misunderstood something, but I had no intention of explaining. Wasn't this exactly what Simon wanted? I let out a soft laugh and deliberately added a hint of flirtation to my voice. "What Dylan and I are doing has nothing to do with you, does it?" The moment the words left my mouth, Dylan suddenly leaned closer. His chin was almost resting on my shoulder. I instantly froze. I could feel his breath brushing against my ear. It tickled. "Come on, brother. Don't ask so many questions. Don't worry and go do your thing. I'll take good care of my sister-in-law." As he spoke, his fingers moved slightly and tickled the sensitive spot at my waist. I immediately cursed and reached out to grab his troublesome hand. In the process, I accidentally scratched his forearm. Hiss. Dylan chuckled softly. "Since when do you scratch people? You're this fierce?" My face burned with embarrassment. "Shut up. I don't want to hear you talking anymore." The corners of Dylan's lips curled upward, casually. He nodded. All right, I'll be quiet." But he still didn't spare me from the tickling, to the point that I couldn't even get out a complete sentence. Simon remained silent, listening to me bicker and joke around with his brother. Eventually, at some point, he hung up the call. Chapter 6. The next morning, Dylan insisted on making breakfast for me, claiming that his years abroad had elevated him to the level of a 5-star chef. In the kitchen, the broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted man bustled around wearing a pink apron. Every now and then, he would turn around and make a funny face at me as I sat on the couch. Simon had never done things like this for me. When he looked at me, there was only indifference. That was why I had never once mistaken the two brothers for each other. They were completely different. "Laura, come try my freshly made century egg and lean pork congee." Coming, covering my still aching lower back, I slowly made my way over. He immediately held a spoonful of congee out toward my lips. "Try it." My raised hand froze in midair. Then I lowered it, quickly swallowing the spoonful of congee. I took a step back and put some distance between us. It's pretty good. It just seems like it's missing salt. The expectant smile on Dylan's face instantly froze. After half a second of silence, he seemed to realize that this was a complete disaster for a 5-star chef. Awkwardly scratching his head, he said, "I think I forgot to add salt." I was about to comfort him, but suddenly, he made a heart shape with his hands at me. "Because my love for you needs no seasoning." It was such a ridiculous pickup line that it should have left me speechless. Yet somehow, I felt my face growing warm. At that moment, Simon came back, standing in the entryway, tall and elegant. He held his white jade prayer beads loosely at his side. The way he looked at me was quiet and unreadable. Eventually, his gaze landed on the hand supporting my lower back. "So after loving me for 15 years, you immediately moved on to someone else? Laura, that's really something." Hearing his inexplicable sarcasm, I found it almost funny. Funny enough that I couldn't resist snapping back. "You're not dead." "What? Was I supposed to mourn you like a widow for 3 years?" Simon fell silent, his thin lips pressed into a tight line. I knew he had misunderstood the situation between Dylan and me, but I didn't explain. Instead, I lightly rubbed my sore lower back and deliberately encouraged the misunderstanding. "Besides, isn't this exactly what you wanted? If I really do get pregnant, should the child call you dad or uncle?" Something in those words clearly struck a nerve. Simon's face darkened. His eyes became especially cold. At that moment, Dylan casually wrapped an arm around my waist. His bright eyes curved into a smile, and the grin on his face was both carefree and arrogant. "Dad, obviously. After all, according to my brother, we look exactly alike. In the future, you can see the kid on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I'll see the kid on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We'll alternate Sundays. How's that sound?" Simon lowered his eyes. His long eyelashes cast shadows across his face, making it impossible to read his emotions. "Do whatever you want." He threw out the words coldly and turned toward the study. I patted the hand Dylan still had around my waist. "The performance is over. You can let go now." To my surprise, he suddenly tightened his grip and pulled me firmly against him. I pressed a hand against his chest, trying to push him away. It didn't help much. The only thing it accomplished was making me very aware of how solid his chest was. "I helped you put on that act." Lowering his head, he leaned in close. "Shouldn't I get something in return?" Instinctively holding my breath, I started stammering. What kind of reward?" "Be my artist for a day. Paint a portrait of me." I immediately froze, forcing out a stiff laugh. I said, "You should ask for something else. I haven't painted in a very long time." I hadn't painted in 5 years. Chapter 7. 5 years ago, someone reported my graduation project for plagiarism. It was a design I had poured my heart and soul into. It was my baby, but for reasons I never understood. Another designer had published a highly similar work 2 weeks before mine. No matter how much I tried to defend myself, I couldn't prove my innocence. In the end, I lost my degree. I was publicly criticized by the university, and I became a laughingstock in our circle. After that, I never picked up a paintbrush again. No, there was one exception: Miranda's 25th birthday. She insisted on being my model and begged me to paint her beautifully. She said it was simply to commemorate our friendship and family bond. I refused again and again, but she pouted and said pitifully, "Laura, don't you consider me your best friend anymore?" For a moment, I couldn't find any words. Simon, who had been quietly folding paper cranes beside me, suddenly looked up. As always, his tone was cold and detached. "It's only a painting. What exactly are you refusing?" I pressed my lips together. In the end, I agreed, but I made one condition: don't post it online. Who would have thought that on the very night I finished the painting, I would become a trending topic? Miranda uploaded the portrait and captioned it, "Thank you to Laura for the birthday gift. I absolutely love it." After hiding myself away for so long, she forcibly dragged me back into the public eye. People immediately dug up my past. They called me a plagiarist and told Miranda to stay away from me. "I'm really sorry, Laura. The painting was just too beautiful. I couldn't resist posting it." Sob emoji. Holding my hand, Miranda swayed it back and forth as she apologized. I lowered my eyes and stared at our intertwined fingers. For the first time, I said something cruel to her. I'm in a bad mood right now. Can you stay away from me? Miranda froze on the spot. I turned around and went home, but the moment I stepped through the door, my father and stepmother unleashed a storm of criticism. What exactly were you trying to show off? So what if you can paint? If I'd known you'd embarrass me like this, I should have broken your hands back then. Laura, your father worked so hard to suppress that plagiarism scandal, and now you've caused another mess. Do you think our family has endless money to waste? You really don't understand how difficult life is when you're not the one paying the bills. Every word struck against my back like a hammer, pressing down on me until I gradually bent beneath the weight. The pride and liveliness I once had as a wealthy young woman were slowly worn away. I think it was from that day onward that I truly became quiet. When Simon saw me again, even he raised an eyebrow in rare surprise. You've changed a lot. I smiled faintly. I don't have a choice. I can't keep bringing shame to my family the way I used to. Later, because our families remained close, Miranda and I reconciled. But the warmth between us was never the same again. Now, hearing Dylan bring up painting again, my first instinct was to avoid the subject. But he looked at me seriously. His dark eyes seemed to hold an entire sky full of stars. Laura, you said you were going to become a great artist. But I blinked rapidly, trying to suppress the tears burning in my eyes. I've been branded as a plagiarist. That's all anyone sees when they look at me. I don't believe you copied anyone. After accusing you, that designer disappeared completely. But someone transferred him over 30 million. I don't think that's a coincidence. Laura, you didn't do anything wrong. A few days ago, I found his address. Want to go talk to him? Listening to the certainty in his voice, I finally broke down. The grievance I had buried for 5 years burst through its dam. So, there was someone who believed me. In the end, I agreed to paint a portrait for Dylan. But not now, he said. On the day your name is finally cleared, make me the first person you paint. Chapter 8. At noon, we returned to the Sun family estate for lunch. Mrs. Sun once again brought up her wish to have a grandchild. My heart skipped a beat, and instinctively, I looked toward Dylan's son, who was playing Go with Mr. Sun not far away. In front of his elders, he sat properly at the board, lacking some of his usual laziness. Only the long fingers resting on his thigh continued to toy with a smooth black ghost stone, rubbing it lightly. For some reason, I suddenly remembered the feeling of his calloused fingertips accidentally brushing against my waist the night before. Just then, he looked up. His gaze landed on me, and one eyebrow lifted ever so slightly. Only then did I snap back to reality. My ears instantly turned red, and I hurriedly looked elsewhere. Instead, I unexpectedly met Simon's eyes. If this had been in the past, I would have stared back at him happily without hesitation. But now, I subconsciously frowned and looked away. His fingers immediately tightened around the prayer beads in his hand. After lunch, Dylan came back home with us, but as he stepped through the entrance, Simon blocked the doorway. Your house isn't here. Dylan casually bumped past him and walked inside. Stopping beside me, he hooked the corner of his lips into an innocent smile. I know, but I need to stay with my sister-in-law. Did you forget? Yesterday, you were the one who told her to have a child with me. Simon fell silent. He simply stared at me. As for me, I obediently wrapped my arm around Dylan's and waved at Simon. Go have fun somewhere else. Don't interrupt the two of us. 2 seconds later, Simon left. The door slammed behind him with enough force to shake the entire house. The sound left me standing there blankly for a moment. Was he angry? But wasn't this exactly what he wanted? After my brief distraction, Dylan called me over, and together we booked plane tickets overseas. I planned to meet Tony again, the designer who had accused me of plagiarism, but when we arrived, we learned that Tony had been in a car accident a few days earlier. He hadn't survived. I stood outside the hospital for a long time. The cold foreign wind cut across my face like a knife. The next second, Dylan stepped to my side and positioned himself against the wind, shielding me from it. It's okay. There has to be another way. I nodded, allowing the wind to tangle my long hair. As my vision became obscured, It almost felt as though I had become separated from the world itself, until someone called out, "Mr. Sunday." Dylan and I turned around. A middle-aged woman stood not far away. It was Tony's wife. Quietly, I pulled my mask higher over my face. She hurried over and bowed deeply to Dylan. Nervous and grateful, she blurted everything out at once. "When you didn't answer my calls, I thought you weren't coming. You're the benefactor of our family. Tony kept saying he wanted to see you one last time but never got the chance. He's probably crying about it in the afterlife." Dylan stood frozen for a moment, but he quickly recovered. His eyes turned cold and distant, and even his posture lost its usual casualness. For a split second, I almost called him Simon. He looked so much like him. After a brief pause, Tony's wife carefully glanced at Dylan and continued, "After Tony passed away, he didn't leave much money behind. I'm here in a foreign country with a child, and life is really difficult. Mr. Sun, how about helping us with another 30 million? Dylan lowered his eyes and looked at her coldly. He said nothing, yet the pressure he gave off was overwhelming. Anxiously rubbing her hands together, she hurried on, "If you don't want to help me, that's fine. But Tony left behind some things before he died, and those things might end up in your wife Lara's hands. When that happens, I'm afraid things could become very unpleasant." Chapter 9. Hearing my name, I froze. A chill spread through my heart inch by inch. "Simon, what exactly have you been doing behind my back?" "Money isn't the issue." Dylan's voice suddenly turned cold, carrying a trace of displeasure. "But this is the last time. Give me the evidence. I'll destroy it personally. And if you keep a backup, I'll make sure you join Tony." Of course, but I need to see the money first." Dylan narrowed his eyes and let out a cold laugh. "Don't argue with me. I don't feel like getting blood on my hands." Perhaps remembering the influence behind the Sun family, Tony's wife hesitated briefly before finally backing down. "All right, I'll give it to you now, but you absolutely can't go back on your word." "Fine." After several seconds of hesitation, she pulled out a USB drive. Dylan immediately connected it to his phone and opened the files inside. There were phone recordings and chat logs. Suddenly, Tony's wife let out a surprised sound. "Huh, Mr. Sun, where are your prayer beads today?" Dylan's fingers paused briefly. Then, without even lifting his eyes, he answered calmly and concisely, "It's cold. They make my hands cold. The 30 million will be transferred to your account tomorrow. Stay hidden overseas." With those words, Dylan immediately turned and left. I hurried after him. After hearing about the money, Tony's wife was no longer focused on her suspicion. Instead, she happily escorted us out. On the way back to the hotel, I listened to the recordings stored on the USB drive. One recording contained Simon's voice. 30 million. Stay away from Miranda from now on. Otherwise, I don't mind getting blood on my hands. Another recording contained Miranda's voice. I've already sent Lara's drafts to you. Just make a few changes and publish them quickly. When the time comes, make sure the scandal becomes as big as possible. I sat on the hotel bed in silence. The recordings echoed endlessly in my ears. My chest felt painfully tight. Miranda, why would you do this? Simon, what did I ever do to deserve this from you? Then the sound of knocking interrupted my thoughts. Dylan kept knocking on the door, pulling me out of my grief. I opened it. He stood outside looking worried, carefully studying my face. Only after confirming that I seemed all right did he finally let out a quiet sigh of relief. I thought you'd lock yourself in your room and cry your eyes out. I blinked my dry, aching eyes and gave a bitter smile. I said nothing. Cry? I was hurting too much. Hurting so much that I couldn't even cry anymore. Don't worry, I'm fine. Go get some sleep. We have a flight to catch tomorrow. Dylan continued looking at me for a long moment. Only then did he take half a step back and point behind himself. So, my brother really went home? I couldn't help laughing. Go to sleep. Good night. Only then did he finally relax and turn around to leave. But the next second, I suddenly grabbed the corner of his shirt. Thank you. He didn't turn around. You don't need to thank me. A brother protecting his little sister is only natural. Chapter 10. The day after returning home, I pushed open the front door and immediately heard a woman's laughter coming from inside. It was Miranda. She was sitting on Simon's lap, her cheeks slightly flushed. When she saw me, she slowly climbed off him and greeted me with a smile. "Laura, you're back." At the same time, a string of jade prayer beads slipped from beneath her dress and fell to the floor. Their surface glistened faintly. They were the 18th birthday gift I had given Simon. And now, they had been treated like this. I didn't even want to imagine how devastated the old me would have been. Fortunately, I didn't care that much anymore. After 3 years apart, Miranda was still the same. She ran over and grabbed my arm, shaking it playfully. "Bestie, why haven't you replied to my messages? I was worried about you, so I came to see you." I happened to run into Brother Simon and kept him company for a while. Happened to run into him? They had already reached this stage, yet they were still pretending in front of me, expressionless. I pulled my arm away and shoved her without mercy. The force sent her stumbling straight to the floor. "Miranda!" Simon rushed over and helped her up before turning to me angrily. "Laura, what is wrong with you?" Apologized to Miranda. Without hesitation, I raised my middle finger. Not happening. It was the first time I had ever spoken to him like that. Simon's gaze settled on me, carrying a trace of scrutiny. Then he suddenly laughed. "You're throwing a tantrum because of me? Laura, there's really no need. You know I don't love you. All these little tricks will only make me dislike you even more." I looked at his face, momentarily dazed. For 15 years, I had loved Simon. Whether I was the cheerful and lively girl from my youth or the quiet and obedient wife I became after marriage, he had never once smiled at me. In front of me, he was like the frozen surface of a lake. No matter what I did, not a single ripple ever appeared. This was the first time he had smiled in front of me, but it was filled with mockery. Mockery for the girl who had spent years changing herself just to be loved by him. I sighed softly. Then I looked at Simon calmly and said, "You're mistaken. The current version of you isn't worth me throwing a tantrum over. Simon, let's get divorced." The cold disgust in his eyes instantly transformed into shock, as though he had never imagined that I would willingly give him up. "Laura." He narrowed his eyes, his lips pressed into a thin line. "This joke isn't funny." I shook my head. "I'm not joking. Don't you love my cousin? Once we're divorced, you'll be free to marry her. Then I'll get to call you my cousin-in-law." Simon stared at me intensely, as if trying to find some trace of dishonesty or stubborn pride on my face. I simply looked back at him quietly. "What? You don't want to marry her?" Miranda abruptly lifted her head and looked toward him. Simon paused briefly. Then he grabbed Miranda's hand and deliberately intertwined their fingers before meeting my gaze directly. "Stop trying to drive a wedge between us. Laura, divorce is fine, but when we speak to my parents, you're the one who has to say you've fallen for someone else. I don't want them thinking badly of me, and Miranda has only recently returned to the entertainment industry. This can't become a stain on her reputation." I fell silent. For the first time, I wanted to describe the man I once cherished most with one word: shameless. He knew perfectly well how much Mr. and Mrs. Sun adored me as their daughter-in-law. He was the one who had betrayed our marriage, and yet he wanted me to take all the blame. Shameless. At that moment, Dylan, standing beside me, muttered a curse under his breath. "For fuck's sake, why is getting divorced so complicated? Worried about your image? If you screwed up, just admit it. Mom and Dad don't only have one son." As he spoke, he decisively pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of Simon and Miranda holding hands. Then he sent it directly to the Sun family group chat. Simon lunged forward to stop him, but he was too late. The photo had already been sent, along with a voice message from Dylan delivered in his usual carefree tone. "My brother cheated. He brought his mistress to the house and is demanding a divorce from my sister-in-law." Chapter 11. The four of us were summoned back to the Sun family estate. The moment we stepped through the door, Mr. Sun's stern and authoritative voice rang out. "Simon, kneel." Simon's son didn't move. He simply stood in the middle of the living room and declared confidently, "I didn't do anything wrong. I just found the person I truly love." The moment those words left his mouth, Mr. Sun's belt lashed across his body. "Then why the hell did you marry Laura in the first place? She was a perfectly good woman, and you're out here cheating on her?" The moment Simon was struck, Miranda immediately rushed forward and threw herself between them. "Uncle Son, stop hitting him. If you hurt him, your grandson will be heartbroken." "Grandson?" Miranda gently touched her stomach. "I'm pregnant. It's Simon's child." Mr. and Mrs. Sun froze. For a long moment, they exchanged looks before turning toward me, who had remained silent the entire time. Finally, Mrs. Sun gritted her teeth and let out a cold laugh. "Then get rid of it. The Sun family will never accept an illegitimate child. The only grandchildren I recognize are the ones Laura gives birth to." "Mom, I don't love her. If you insist on having grandchildren from Laura, then I'm afraid your son can't help you. You ungrateful brat." Amid the chaos, I spoke calmly. "Mother-in-law, Simon and I should get divorced. If I ever remarry and have children in the future, I'll let them call you grandma." The Sun family elders still tried to persuade me, but my mind was already made up. The divorce had to happen. Under the reluctant gazes of Mr. and Mrs. Sun, Simon and I finalized our divorce. That very afternoon, Miranda eagerly announced her relationship online. After all the twists and turns, it was always you. Attached was a photo of two hands intertwined, perhaps to support Miranda's return to the entertainment industry. Simon, who normally never used social media, actually created an account just to leave a comment beneath her post. "Hello, my wife." The two of them immediately shot to the top of the trending topics. The romance between the nation's former sweetheart and a wealthy heir captivated countless people. Everyone called it a fairy tale love story, but there were dissenting voices as well. Am I the only one who remembers that Simon was married before? They were already divorced. Besides, his ex-wife Laura was a plagiarist with terrible character. Good riddance. Exactly. Miranda is the perfect match for him. Wonderful. They announced their relationship. Yet somehow, I was dragged onto the trending charts again, and once again, people flooded the internet to insult me. Not long afterward, Miranda sent me a message. "Laura, thank you for giving Simon back to me. When we get married, would you be my bridesmaid?" She was unbelievable. After reading the message, I forwarded one of the recordings we had obtained from Tony's wife. Then I replied, "Listen to this first. After hearing it, do you still want me to be your bridesmaid?" Chapter 12. I'm sorry, Laura. I didn't mean to frame you. The Miranda who had been acting so arrogant through text messages just moments ago was now clutching my leg and begging for forgiveness. "Please, I'm apologizing. Can you delete those recordings? Please. I'm begging you." Simon stood beside her with a dark expression. "Laura, enough. Miranda has already apologized to you. What more do you want?" I looked at him in disbelief. First of all, I have every right not to accept her apology. Second, don't think for a second that you're getting away with this either. I played the recording between Simon and Tony. The cold composure on his face finally crumbled. Panic replaced it. He stepped forward as if to grab my hand. I slapped him across the face, hard enough that my own hand hurt afterward. His head snapped to the side in embarrassment. Yet in the end, he lowered his head and pleaded, "Please let Miranda go." I laughed out of sheer disbelief. Then why didn't she let me go back then? Why did she set me up again and again? Do I owe her something? And you had an argument with her, got angry, and decided to use my marriage and my happiness as collateral damage? Why? Simon lowered his head. The pride he had always carried was gone. All he could say was, "I'm sorry. I couldn't be bothered to deal with either of them anymore, so I released everything to the public." At the very peak of Miranda's high-profile comeback, I pushed her straight into the abyss. Overnight, she became public enemy number one, and when everything collapsed around her, she finally stopped pretending and lashed out at me. "Laura, you're just as shameless as your mother. Your mother ruined mine, and now you've ruined me. Our family must have the worst luck in history to have ever crossed paths with you and your mother. And let me tell you the truth, I never even liked Simon. I just wanted to steal the man you loved. Just like your mother couldn't stop herself from stealing mine. Only then did I finally understand why she hated me so much. Because her mother, my aunt, and my mother had once fallen in love with the same man. My aunt had used a scheme to force that man into marriage after becoming involved with him. But the marriage was unhappy. In the end, my uncle took his own life. After he died, they found an entire drawer filled with sketchbooks. Every single drawing was of my mother. When my father learned the truth, his relationship with my mother completely fell apart. And because I studied art, he eventually began to resent me as well. Later, my mother threw herself into a river and followed the man she loved in death. 2 families were shattered beyond repair. But all this time, I had believed that Miranda and I had remained untouched by those events. It turned out, she had never forgotten any of it. But that was fine. She shouldn't expect peace from now on. Not after everything she'd done. Between Miranda and me, this wasn't over. Chapter 13. After my name was finally cleared, I got my degree back. As promised, the first painting I completed after picking up a brush again was given to Dylan. By the time I finished, dusk had already arrived. Outside the window, the scattered golden light of the setting sun fell across Dylan's face. "How about I take you for a ride?" he asked. This time, I didn't refuse. I sat on the back of his scooter, feeling the summer evening breeze carry the faint scent of laundry detergent from his clothes toward me. Just like countless times before, only this time, I wasn't crying and complaining to him anymore. Instead, he was the one who asked first. "So why exactly did you like my brother back then?" I froze for a moment, thinking about it carefully. I realized I didn't actually know when I had fallen for Simon. I only knew that by the time I recognized those feelings, I was already trapped by the occasional scraps of attention he tossed my way. If I really had to give a reason, it would probably be because he got excellent grades. At first, it was admiration. Later, I guess it became love. Dylan fell silent. After all, he had absolutely hated studying when he was younger. Then, he suddenly blurted out, "My grades are good now. So, why don't you try liking me instead?" I looked up. His ears and the back of his neck were gradually turning red. "I used to be your sister-in-law. So what? We're divorced now, aren't we?" I fell silent. Countless memories of my time with him flashed through my mind. And in the end, I arrived at an answer. He was worth it. But it was too soon. I just got divorced. Dylan instantly understood what I meant. "All right, then I'll wait. I'm reserving the spot for your second marriage in advance." Chapter 14. At the age of 30, I decided to get married again, to Dylan, because after one careless mistake, I became pregnant. When Dylan placed my pregnancy report on the table and announced our engagement, Mr. and Mrs. Sun were so happy they couldn't stop smiling. Simon, who had long since been dumped by Miranda, stood off to the side staring at me. Eventually, he found an opportunity to corner me upstairs in a room. In his hand was the birthday gift I had once given him, the string of jade prayer beads. "Laura." I cleaned them. I frowned, my eyes full of disgust. "They're filthy. Take them and stay away from me." Simon froze. After a long while, his eyes gradually turned red. His gaze slowly dropped to my stomach. "You really got pregnant?" I laughed softly. "Of course, just as you wished. It's just a shame you never got the chance to swap Miranda's baby with mine." His lips parted, but no words came out. In the end, all he could manage was a dry and unwilling question. Did you really fall in love with my brother?" I didn't answer. I simply looked at him the way one might look at an idiot. Just then, there was a knock on the door behind me. Dylan's familiar carefree voice came through from outside. "Sister-in-law, open the door." "No, wait, fiancé, open the door. I'm here to pick you up." I gave Simon a polite smile. Then I turned around, opened the door, and threw myself into Dylan's arms. He wrapped me tightly in his embrace. Then he looked toward the man inside the room, the face identical to his own, and grinned triumphantly. "Brother, thanks for ruining your own life. Otherwise I never would have had the chance to swoop in. When we get married, I'll save you a seat at the main table." I leaned up and kissed Dylan on the lips. Then I turned to look at the regret-filled Simon, and raised both middle fingers at him. "Brother, don't forget to come to the wedding. Oh, and one more thing. The baby is going to call you uncle."